McGraw-Hill Audio presents The Birth of Plenty, How the Prosperity of the Modern World Was Created. Written by William J. Bernstein. Read by Grover Gardner. Introduction. The captain of HMS Centurion had every reason to thank watchmaker John Harrison, who had accompanied his H-1 marine chronometer, a large and extremely accurate clock used to compute longitude, on its first sea trials in the late spring of 1737. As the faint line of the English coast rose above the horizon, Centurion's navigator, relying on traditional dead reckoning, calculated that the ship was sailing in safe waters south of Dartmouth. Harrison disagreed. His clock placed them about 80 miles from Dartmouth, in hazardous waters just off the Lizard, a peninsula at the far southwestern tip of England. Taking no chances, the captain, a line officer named Proctor, turned east and confirmed a few hours later that Harrison's computation had been dead on. Proctor's caution would have been readily understandable to any seafaring contemporary. 30 years earlier, Admiral Sir Cloudesley Shovel, making the same navigational error, drove his fleet onto the Scilly Isles, drowning over 2,000 men. That catastrophe riveted British public attention on the need for improved navigational techniques. 7 years later, in 1714, Parliament passed a Longitude Act, establishing a Board of Longitude and offering a prize of £20,000, roughly $1 million in today's money, to anyone able to provide a method of determining east-west position to within half a degree, about 30 miles, of accuracy. Aside from possibly owing his life to Harrison, Proctor had also unknowingly witnessed one of history's great turning points, ranking with the invention of the steam engine, the development of representative democracy, or the Battle of Waterloo. The advent of a reliable marine chronometer helped transform maritime trade from an uncertain and often deadly venture into a reliable wealth machine. 2.5 centuries later, Harrison's clock, on display at the National Maritime Museum in Greenwich and still keeping accurate time to within a fraction of a second per day, is a marvel. But it was, in fact, the least conspicuous of the technologic advances of the remarkable era that ran from 1730 to 1850. Few ordinary citizens ever saw a marine chronometer, whereas the other great advances of that period, the modern canal system, the steam engine, and the telegraph, were readily visible to everyone. Since the dawn of the modern era, it has been the conceit that the technologic advances of the day are unique and revolutionary. Certainly, the thinking in our time is no exception. This is, however, an illusion. To see the full effect of scientific progress on human affairs, we have to look to the technologic explosion that occurred in those 120 years and transformed life from the top to the bottom of the social fabric. At a stroke, the speed of transportation increased tenfold, and communication became almost instantaneous. As recently as the turn of the 19th century, it took Thomas Jefferson 10 days to travel from Monticello to Philadelphia, with considerable attendant expense, physical pain, and peril. By 1850, the steam locomotive made the same journey possible in 1 day and at a tiny fraction of its former price in money, discomfort, and risk. Consider this passage from Stephen Ambrose's Undaunted Courage. A critical fact in the world of 1801 was that nothing moved faster than the speed of a horse. No human being, no manufactured item, no bushel of wheat, no side of beef, no letter, no information, no idea, order, or instruction of any kind moved faster. Nothing had moved any faster, and as far as Jefferson's contemporaries were able to tell, nothing ever would. With the invention of the telegraph by William Fothergill Cooke and Charles Wheatstone in England in 1837, instantaneous communication abruptly altered the face of economic, military, and political affairs in ways that dwarf the changes wrought in this century by the airplane and the computer. Before the telegraph, the primitive state of communication routinely yielded tragedy, both great and small. Andrew Jackson's victory over the British at New Orleans in 1815, for example, occurred 2 weeks after the signing of a peace treaty at Ghent. Since 1850, the pace of technological progress has been slowing, not accelerating. The average inhabitant of the Western world alive at
Sample complete. Ready to continue?